Many Western and powerful nations are providing support to Israel in its conflict with Hamas. However, the question arises, who is standing up for Palestine? What are the intentions of these nations in aiding Israel? In this scenario, China and Russia have emerged as supporters of Palestine's defense. Their concern lies in the potential escalation of violence in Palestine if all nations align with Israel, leading to devastating outcomes. China and Russia have chosen a distinct path. Unlike the United States, which has supplied military aid to Israel, China and Russia have refrained from providing similar support to Palestine. Their approach does not grow the war, but it also does not remain silent in the face of the suffering faced by the Palestinian people. China and Russia want a solution, and unlike the US, they want a two-state fix. So what exactly is the approach of China and Russia to this conflict? Let's find out. In this video, we will discuss the reasons behind China and Russia's support for Palestine. We will also address whether their stance is anti-Israel. Watch the video till the end to know whether China could potentially play a role in finding a resolution to this conflict. Let's get started. The Israeli-Gaza conflict is a highly sensitive issue that has garnered attention from countries worldwide. But most of the nations, especially the Western nations, are standing with Israel. It is making many experts say that the US is equally involved in genocide as Israel. For many, it does not matter where the people being killed come from. What matters is the importance of human life. So while the US has taken sides, not just to show support with words, but has also provided aid. According to Voice of America, the US has approved another $14.5 billion in military aid to Israel. With all this aid, it does not look like the US is trying to stop the war. The US is trying to add fuel to the fire. If the US wanted to help Israel's people, it could have helped in other ways. But what's the point of sending military aid? To keep the war going. It means all the support and aid goes to Israel. With the military aid, Israel would be strong enough to continue the bloodshed. This would result in destroying Palestine. The Chinese foreign minister said over the weekend that Israel's bombing campaign had gone beyond the scope of self-defense and that it should stop the collective punishment of the people of Gaza. So, China and Russia have taken a different approach. Instead of standing with Israel, they are supporting Palestine. Both Russia and China have expressed sympathy for the Palestinian people. This means they understand and support the Palestinian cause and their desire for self-determination and peace. Their expressions of sympathy demonstrate their acknowledgement of the difficulties faced by Palestinians living in a region marked by conflict and instability. But they are not simply taking sides. China has consistently called for restraint and a ceasefire in the Israeli-Gaza conflict. This stance reflects China's commitment to promoting peace and stability in the region. By urging restraint, China encourages both parties to avoid actions that could escalate the violence and lead to more suffering. While advocating for restraint and a ceasefire, China has also criticized Israel's actions. They believe that some of Israel's actions go beyond the scope of self-defense. China has expressed concern about what they describe as collective punishment imposed on Gaza residents. This term refers to actions that harm the entire population, not just those directly involved in hostilities. By criticizing Israel's actions, China aims to hold all parties accountable and protect the rights and well-being of the civilian population. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi emphasized the importance of abiding by international humanitarian law during the exercise of the right of self-defense. In his call with his Turkish counterpart Hakan Fidan, he stated, "The exercise of the right of self-defense should abide by international humanitarian law and should not be at the expense of innocent civilian casualties." This underlines the principle that self-defense must not come at the cost of civilian lives. Because of China's pressure to save Palestine's people's lives, the international community is actively engaged in efforts to prevent the Israel-Hamas conflict from escalating further. As U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken traveled through 7 countries in the region, he expressed the necessity of Israel's right to defend itself against attacks from Hamas. However, he stressed that how this defense is carried out is crucial. Secretary Blinken emphasized the shared values for human life and human dignity. He called for Israel to take every possible precaution to avoid harming civilians during its operations. Protecting innocent lives is a fundamental principle of international humanitarian law and a key concern for world leaders in addressing the conflict. China's different approach to this matter has made other officials also consider the importance of saving lives in Palestine. But unlike the US, China does not support war. China has repeated its commitment to achieving peace in the ongoing Israel-Palestine conflict. The key to this, according to China, lies in realizing the two-state solution and the establishment of an independent state of Palestine. China has also pledged its support for efforts that promote peace and is ready to work tirelessly with the international community to reach this goal. China firmly believes that the path to peace in the Israel-Palestine conflict is through the implementation of the two-state solution. This solution envisions the establishment of an independent state of Palestine alongside Israel. It aims to provide both nations with their territories, allowing them to coexist in peace and security. China has promised to support any efforts that contribute to peace in the region. This support extends to working closely with the international community to facilitate a resolution that benefits all parties involved. By emphasizing their commitment to peace, China underlines the importance of finding a peaceful and just solution to the ongoing hostilities. So China's stance on the Israel-Palestine conflict is clear. They call for an immediate end to hostilities, which have caused suffering and destruction. Ending the violence is seen as a crucial step toward achieving lasting and meaningful peace. China condemns actions that harm civilians. This condemnation reflects their commitment to upholding the principles of international humanitarian law. Protecting innocent lives and minimizing harm to non-combatants is a fundamental aspect of this law. Not only China, but Russia also has the same approach. And before we talk about why China and Russia do not stand with the Western narrative, let's first talk about Russia's approach. Russia, much like China, has expressed its sympathy and understanding for the Palestinian people who are embroiled in the Israel-Gaza conflict. The challenges and suffering faced by Palestinians have not gone unnoticed by Russia. They share the Palestinian desire for a just resolution to the ongoing conflict. Russia's expression of sympathy underscores its deep concern for the well-being of the Palestinian population. Russia firmly believes that U.S. support for Israel has contributed significantly to the fueling and prolonging of the conflict, thereby hindering the prospects for peace and stability in the region. The United States has a long-standing relationship with Israel, which includes providing military aid and support. While this support is meant to enhance Israel's security, Russia and others argue that it has played a role in perpetuating the conflict. This military assistance has kept the war alive, making it difficult to find a lasting resolution. Russia's criticism of the United States stems from the U.S.'s actions. By providing military aid to Israel, Russia contends that the United States is indirectly contributing to the continuation of hostilities. Russia's desire for a more balanced approach reflects its commitment to promoting stability and peace in the Middle East. This balanced approach aims to provide a fair and just solution to the various conflicts in the region. It seeks to address the concerns and rights of all parties involved, rather than favoring one side over the other. The core of Russia's position is the belief in an impartial and equitable resolution to the conflicts in the Middle East. This means that the interests and grievances of all involved parties should be taken into consideration when seeking solutions. It calls for a fair and just outcome that benefits all, fostering long-term stability. Now the question is, what makes China and Russia support Palestine? China's historical stance on the Israel-Palestine conflict and its diplomatic efforts in recent years highlight its commitment to finding a peaceful resolution to this enduring issue. China's support for the Palestinian cause dates back decades, reminiscent of the USSR's position during the Cold War. China's support for the Palestinian cause is deeply rooted in history and solidarity. This support echoes the stance of the former USSR during the Cold War, demonstrating a long-standing commitment to the Palestinian people's quest for self-determination and justice. According to an article published by Diplomat 2 years ago, China had the same narrative that it has today. This stable stance demonstrates their desire to promote peace and stability in the region. Despite their complex relationships with the parties involved, both countries have pursued a more neutral approach, emphasizing the need for de-escalation and peaceful conflict resolution. Moscow has consistently called for the de-escalation of tensions in the Israel-Palestine conflict. They stress the importance of resolving emerging issues through peaceful means. Russia's approach is grounded in the belief that reducing tensions is a critical step towards achieving lasting peace in the region. China's position aligns closely with that of Russia. They also urge all parties involved to exercise restraint to prevent further casualties. This call for restraint reflects China's commitment to minimizing harm and suffering in the ongoing conflict. Both nations had the same narrative years ago. Russia and China are known for their shared attitude toward the United Nations UN as a fundamental pillar of global political architecture. They view the UN as an essential platform for addressing international issues, including the Israel-Palestine conflict. This support for the UN highlights its commitment to a multilateral approach to conflict resolution. Both Russia and China have been vocal in their opposition to the US-promoted rules-based international order. They contend that this order does not adequately consider the perspectives and interests of all nations. Instead, they advocate for a more inclusive approach to international relations. China and Russia want the world to consider both nations good. The United States has alleged that China and Russia's support for Palestine is primarily driven by their desire to oppose US policies. This accusation suggests that these countries are using the Israel-Palestine conflict as a means to counter US influence in the region. As we discussed earlier, the approach taken by China and Russia in the Israel-Palestine conflict is not entirely new. Their historical support for Palestine dates back many years, rooted in a sense of solidarity and a commitment to the Palestinian cause. This support, therefore, is not a reaction to US policies. While the US accuses China and Russia of backing Palestine to oppose the US, the situation might be more complex. Some argue that the US itself may support Israel in part to counterbalance China and Russia. This perspective suggests that geopolitical interests play a significant role in these nations' positions. The Israel-Palestine conflict is multifaceted and influenced by various factors, including historical ties, political interests, and global power dynamics. The positions taken by the US, China, and Russia are shaped by these complexities, and it is essential to consider the broader context when analyzing their roles in the conflict. China's approach is balanced, as said by many experts. It does not stand with war, but it does not also support any of the nations. So how's China's approach neutral? China's approach to the conflict has maintained a delicate balance between supporting the Palestinian cause and fostering strong economic ties with Israel. This pragmatic approach reflects China's emphasis on diplomacy and economic cooperation. China has consistently advocated for a political solution to the Palestinian question. This stance stresses the importance of dialogue and peaceful negotiations in resolving the conflict, rather than resorting to military means. China supports the United Nations' role in resolving the Israel-Palestine issue. The UN is seen as a vital international forum for addressing the conflict, highlighting China's commitment to a multilateral approach. China places a strong emphasis on abiding by international humanitarian law during the exercise of the right of self-defense. This principle ensures that actions taken in self-defense do not cause harm to innocent civilians and adhere to established legal norms. China consistently calls on all parties involved to exercise restraint and avoid further escalation of the conflict. This appeal aligns with the broader goal of minimizing violence and suffering in the region. China has expressed sympathy for the difficulties faced by the Palestinian side, particularly the people of Gaza. This sentiment acknowledges the challenges and hardships experienced by Palestinians, particularly those in Gaza. With all this, China has not left Israel's hand as well. China is never anti-Israel. Yes, China has a historical affinity for the Palestinian cause, but has also maintained flourishing commercial ties with Israel. Despite its support for Palestine, China has not allowed its flourishing commercial ties with Israel to interfere with its stance on the Israel-Palestine conflict. In a nutshell, unlike the US, China does not support war. It does not support any one nation. China's stance in this conflict underscores its commitment to peace and the value it places on human lives. Unlike the US, China refrains from supporting war and instead stands with the side it perceives as most vulnerable: Palestine. China's approach to the Israel-Palestine conflict is markedly different from the United States. China places a strong emphasis on peace and nonviolence. Its goal is not to support one nation over another, but to advocate for the protection of human lives. China believes that in a conflict where one nation is under attack from all sides, and powerful nations are assisting its opposition, it should stand with the vulnerable party. In the current scenario, China's support aligns with the Palestinian side, which it perceives as needing assistance in the face of overwhelming odds. While the US is supporting Israel to continue the conflict, China takes a different path. China prioritizes seeking peaceful solutions and finding ways to end the violence, minimizing harm to civilians, and supporting efforts to achieve a lasting resolution.